There is a version of intelligence that looks nothing like intelligence. It swears, it procrastinates, it lies awake at 2 a.m. arguing with someone who has no idea the argument is happening. It finds things funny that nobody else in the room finds funny. And it second-guesses itself constantly, even when it's the smartest mind in the conversation. This is the version psychology keeps finding in the research when it looks at people with a genuinely high IQ, and none of it can be faked. Number 1. You swear. Not constantly, not out of laziness, but fluently, expressively, like someone who actually knows exactly which word belongs in a sentence. And sometimes, that word is not one you'd say in front of a grandmother. Here's what the research found. A study published in the journal Language Sciences asked participants to list as many swear words as they could in 1 minute, then as many animals as they could in 1 minute. The people who produced the most swear words also produced the most animals. Not because they were crass, because they had a richer, more expansive vocabulary across every category, including the ones that would make a dictionary blush. The assumption has always been that people who swear lack the words to express themselves any other way. The research says the opposite is true. People with high verbal intelligence don't just know more words, they know more of every kind of word, and they deploy all of them with precision. So, the next time someone raises an eyebrow at your language, you can tell them your lexical fluency is just particularly well-rounded. Or you can just let them figure it out. Number 2. You find things funny that clear the room. Not performed dark humor, the involuntary kind, where something genuinely, structurally absurd strikes you at exactly the wrong moment, in exactly the wrong setting. A funeral, a tense meeting, the precise second someone is trying to make a serious point. And the 2 other people who also felt it happening are the only ones worth talking to for the rest of the evening. A study in cognitive processing found that people who both appreciated and produced dark humor scored significantly higher on verbal intelligence and emotional stability. Here's why that matters. Finding something darkly funny requires your brain to hold 2 contradictory realities simultaneously and locate the collision point between them. That is a cognitively demanding operation. Your brain executes it in milliseconds and calls it a punchline. The people staring blankly aren't missing a sense of humor. They're missing the processing speed. And a mind that can find the absurd folded inside something serious, that notices the quiet joke buried inside a genuinely terrible situation, that's not a personality quirk. That's architecture. Number 3. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. You're in the shower running 3 different versions of a discussion that isn't scheduled until Thursday. You're driving and you're still editing something you said 2 days ago, mapping every branch of how it could have gone differently, finding the one sentence that would have landed better. People call this anxiety. Cognitive researchers call it predictive modeling. Your brain isn't worrying, it's running simulations, pressure testing outcomes before they arrive, anticipating the emotional logic of another person's response before they've even had it. This is the same mechanism behind negotiation, strategic thinking, and every person who seems to read a room before they've even sat down in it. The difference is it doesn't have an off switch. It runs on text messages you haven't sent yet, on arguments with people who have no idea you've already had the argument with them 7 times inside your head and won 4 of them. Number 4. You unconsciously absorb other people's accents, speech rhythms, and mannerisms without meaning to. Spend a weekend with someone who speaks slowly, and something in your own pace quietly shifts down. Talk to someone expressive and animated, and by the end of the conversation, your hands are doing things they weren't doing before. Spend an hour with someone from a different part of the country, and you drive home slightly doing their accent and genuinely hoping nobody in the car noticed. And the strangest part is, you didn't decide to do any of it. There was no moment of choosing. It just happened, the way breathing happens, except somehow more embarrassing when you catch it in the rearview mirror. Researchers call this linguistic accommodation, and it happens because pattern recognition in high IQ individuals operates below the level of conscious decision. Your brain maps how someone communicates and begins integrating it almost immediately, the same way it integrates any pattern worth learning. Most people hear an accent. Your brain hears a system. And before you've decided to do anything about it, you're already running it. That's not an awkward habit. That's one of the rarest things a nervous system can do. Number 5. Certain sensory experiences feel genuinely unbearable to you in a way that seems completely disproportionate to what's actually happening. The restaurant is too loud, and your thinking just stops mid-sentence. The fluorescent light in the office is doing something specific and terrible to your concentration that you can't fully explain to anyone without sounding ridiculous. The wrong fabric against your skin is so present and so insistent, it's competing with every other thought you're trying to have. A study surveying members of Mensa found they reported dramatically higher rates of sensory processing sensitivity compared to national averages. Researchers called it the hyper-brain, hyper-body effect. The same neurological system that enables heightened cognitive processing also receives significantly more signal from the physical environment. Your brain isn't running better software on standard hardware. The hardware is different too. What feels like being precious or difficult is actually a completely logical consequence of a nervous system that was never set to factory default. Most people have a filter. Yours just never came with one. Number 6. You don't follow rules because someone told you to. Here's what that actually feels like from the inside. It's not defiance. It's not a bad attitude. It's more like being asked to agree that 2 + 2 = 5 by someone with an impressive job title. And no matter how senior the person is, no matter how long the tradition has been in place, none of it changes the math. Your brain already ran the calculation. It already knows. Research published in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that higher cognitive ability strongly predicted willingness to challenge and defy unjust or illogical authority. Not out of rebellion, but because a brain running continuous critical evaluation cannot simply suspend that function because the room expects it to. You follow rules you can verify. You respect competence you can observe. What you cannot do, what you have genuinely never been able to do, is look at a wrong answer and call it right because the person delivering it has a title on their door. Some people find this refreshing. Most institutions find it exhausting. Both reactions make complete sense. Number 7. You procrastinate most on the things that matter most to you. Not the small stuff. You can handle the small stuff just fine. It's the one that actually counts, the project with real stakes, the creative work, the decision that could genuinely change something, where you somehow cannot begin. And from the outside, that looks like avoidance or laziness. From the inside, it feels more like standing at the edge of something enormous, with your feet just refusing to move. Studies on high IQ individuals and procrastination found that the same cognitive ability that makes someone excellent at complex work also makes them able to model failure in precise, uncomfortable detail. And when your identity has spent years being built around being the capable one, the one who figures things out, falling short of your own standard isn't just disappointing. It lands somewhere much closer to existential. So, the brain stalls. Not because you're lazy, because it's protecting something it genuinely cannot afford to lose. That's not a productivity problem. That's a measure of how much the thing actually means to you. Number 8. Relationships are harder for you than almost anything else in your life. Not because you don't want closeness, because you want it with a precision that makes closeness genuinely difficult. You notice the small inconsistency between what someone said last week and what they're saying now. You feel the direction something is heading long before the other person has thought about it, which pulls you slightly out of the present moment and into a future that hasn't arrived yet. Sometimes that means you've already quietly processed the ending of something that has only just begun, which, if you think about it, is both an impressive cognitive feat and a genuinely exhausting way to fall in love. Research consistently shows that adults with above-average IQs report higher frustration in romantic relationships, not because they're emotionally unavailable, because intimacy requires a particular kind of surrender, and a brain wired to continuously observe and analyze resists that surrender almost by design. It's not impossible, but it takes more deliberate work than it appears to take for other people. And for a long time, many highly intelligent people quietly wonder why the thing that everyone else seems to do naturally feels like the hardest thing they've ever tried to learn. Number 9. When someone states something confidently that you know to be wrong, your entire body registers it before your brain has finished processing why. There's a tension that moves through you, a quiet internal friction that you have to actively manage not to show on your face. And it doesn't matter if the person is a stranger, a colleague, or someone with 4 degrees and a corner office. The wrongness lands the same way regardless of who's delivering it. What's strange is that the same mechanism that catches other people's errors never extends them the courtesy of switching off when it turns toward you. Highly intelligent people are at least as hard on themselves for intellectual inconsistency as they are on anyone else. They catch their own contradictions. They notice when what they believe doesn't quite survive their own scrutiny. They cannot hold a position they know has a hole in it, just because abandoning it would be inconvenient. Psychologists studying epistemic humility find that higher cognitive ability correlates strongly with this kind of discomfort, both outward and inward. It's not self-doubt, it's intellectual honesty running as an involuntary reflex. And it is genuinely exhausting in a world that rewards sounding certain far more than actually being right. Number 10. You second-guess yourself more than people around you who are measurably less capable. And this is not a coincidence or a quirk. It's almost a mathematical inevitability. Most people know the Dunning-Kruger effect from one direction. People who know very little tend to dramatically overestimate their own competence because they don't yet have the framework to recognize what they're missing. But the effect runs the other way just as hard. And this is the part nobody talks about. The more genuinely someone understands something, the more clearly they can see its edges, the uncertainty, the variables that don't resolve cleanly, the places where the honest answer is, actually, I don't know. Real understanding breeds hesitation, not because the person is wrong, but because they're often the only one in the room who can see exactly how many ways being wrong is possible. Certainty that looks like confidence usually belongs to someone who hasn't thought about it long enough to find the complexity. So if you've spent most of your life feeling less sure than everyone around you seems to be, that's worth sitting with. Because it might not be a gap in your intelligence. It might be the most honest signal of it. Here's what every single one of these signs has in common. None of them look like what we were taught intelligence is supposed to look like. They're inconvenient. They're sometimes isolating. They cannot be rehearsed, performed, or faked. They show up because a particular kind of mind cannot help producing them. Tell me in the comments which one hit closest to home. And if you want to keep going, the next video was made for exactly the kind of person who just watched this one. Click it.